"Consider yourselves under my command," he ordered, and now he organised his flotilla for rescue work. It was suicide for all the boats to go. They were too undermanned to face the bedlam, but one boat with a hand-picked crew might do some good. So Lowe divided his 55 passengers among the other 4 boats and picked volunteers from each to give number 14 some expert oarsmen. It was nerve-wracking work, playing musical chairs with rowboats at 2:30 a.m. in the middle of the Atlantic, almost more than Lowe could stand. "Jump, God damn you, jump," he shouted impatiently at Miss Daisy Minahan. On the other hand, an old lady in a shawl seemed much too agile. Lowe ripped it off and looked into the frightened face of a young man, eyes white with terror. This time nothing was said, but he pitched the man into boat number 10 as hard as he could. It took time to make the transfer, then more time. While Lowe waited for the swimmers to thin out enough to make the expedition safe, then still more time to get there. It was after 3 o'clock, nearly an hour since the sinking, when boat 14 edged into the wreckage and the people. There was little left. Steward John Stewart, first-class passenger W.F. Hoyt, a Japanese steerage passenger who had lashed himself to a door. For nearly an hour, boat 14 played a hopeless blind man's buff, chasing after shouts and calls in the darkness, never quite able to reach whoever was shouting. They got only 4, and Mr. Hoyt died in an hour. Lowe had miscalculated how long it took to row to the scene, how long to locate a voice in the dark. Most of all, how long a man could live in water at 28 degrees. There was, he learned, no need to wait until the crowd thinned out, but at least Lowe went back. Third Officer Pittman, in number 5, also heard the cries. He turned the boat around and shouted, "Now men, we will pull towards the wreck." "Appeal to the officer not to go back," a lady begged. Stewart etches as he tugged at his oar. "Why should we lose all our lives in a useless attempt to save others from the ship?" Other women protested too. Pittman was torn by the dilemma. Finally, he reversed his orders and told his men to lay on their oars. For the next hour, number 5, 40 people in a boat that held 65, heaved gently in the calm Atlantic swell, while its passengers listened to the swimmers 300 yards away. In number 2, Steward Johnson recalled 4th Officer Boxall, asking the ladies, "Shall we go back?" They said no, so boat 2, about 60% full, also drifted while her people listened. The ladies in boat 6 were different. Mrs. Lucian Smith, stung that she had fallen for the white lie her husband used to get her in the boat. Mrs. Churchill Candy, moved by the gallantry of her self-appointed protectors. Mrs. J. Brown, naturally brave and lusty for adventure, all begged Quartermaster Hitchins to return to the scene. Hitchins refused. He painted a vivid picture of swimmers grappling at the boat, of number 6 swamping and capsizing. The women still pleaded, those in the boats. With the feeling of calm came loneliness. Lawrence Beasley wondered why the Titanic, even when mortally wounded, gave everyone a feeling of companionship and security that no lifeboat could replace. In number 3, Elizabeth Shutes watched the shooting stars and thought to herself how insignificant the Titanic's rockets must have looked, competing against nature. She tried to bury her loneliness by pretending she was back in Japan. Twice she had left there at night too, lonely and afraid, but everything came out all right in the end. In boat 4, Miss Jean Gertrude Hippat also watched the shooting stars. She had never seen so many. She recalled a legend that every time there's a shooting star, somebody dies. Slowly, very slowly, life in the boats picked up again. 4th Officer Boxall started firing off green flares from boat 2. Somehow this brought people out of their trance, cheered them up too. It was hard to judge distance, and some thought the green flares were being fired by rescue ships on the horizon. Now we have some images. Here, this is the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It was photographed near the scene on the 15th of April by the chief steward of the German ship Prince Adalbert. He took it not because of the Titanic. The news had not yet reached him, but because a great red scar of red paint ran along the iceberg's base, suggesting a recent collision with some ship. Here we have statistics of passengers lost on the Titanic from the Illustrated London News. And at the top we have a cartoon from the London Daily Herald. Down below, left, controversy swirled around Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon, who left the Titanic in boat 1, carrying only 12 people, and right, Lady Duff Gordon, she and her secretary were the only women in boat 1, both from the Illustrated London News. And here we have various people connected with the Titanic. 5th Officer Lowe, the Countess of Roths, Captain Edward Smith, Thomas Andrews, Baker Charles Ewan, and this is the ship's band. At the top, all day on the 15th of April, anxious crowds besieged the White Star offices in New York. They were assured that the Titanic was practically unsinkable. Down here is a one-word telegram which told steward Fred Hartnell's family all they wanted to know. Here, on the right, Southampton crowds scan the lists of lost and saved, posted outside the White Star offices. And then, finally, memorial pictures heavily bordered in black were eagerly bought from street vendors, as were souvenir napkins, postcards, buttons and bits of pottery, columns of was introduced to an important piece of picnic equipment. Still deathly seasick, she was noticed by a kindly gentleman sitting nearby. He pulled out a silver flask with a cup top and suggested a drink of brandy might help. She took the suggestion and was instantly cured. Perhaps it was the brandy, perhaps the novel experience. In all her 22 years, she had never seen a flask before, and she was fascinated. But no picnic was ever so cold. Mrs. Crosby shivered so hard in number 5 that third officer Pittman wrapped a sail around her. A stoker in number 6 sat beside Mrs. Brown, his teeth chattering with the cold. Finally, she wrapped her sable stole about his legs, tying the tails around his ankles. In number 16, a man in white pyjamas looked so cold he reminded the other passengers of a snowman. Mrs. Charlotte Collier was so numb she toppled over in number 14. Her hair caught in an oarlock and a big tuft came out by the roots. The crew did their best to make the women more comfortable. In number 5, a sailor took off his stockings and gave them to Mrs. Washington Dodge. When she looked up in startled gratitude, he explained, "I assure you, Ma'am, they are perfectly clean. I just put them on this morning." In number 13, Fireman Beecham shivered in his thin jumpers, but he refused to take an extra coat offered him by an elderly lady, insisting it go to a young Irish girl instead. For the people in the boat, there was additional relief from an unexpected quarter. When Steward Ray left his cabin for the last time, he picked up 6 handkerchiefs lying in his trunk. Now he gave them out, telling people to tie a knot in each corner and turn them into caps. As a result, he recalls with pride, 6 heads were crowned. Besides the cold, the number of lady oarsmen dispelled the picnic illusion. In number 4, Mrs. John B. Thayer rode for 5 hours in water up to her shins. In number 6, the irrepressible Mrs. Brown organised the women, 2 to an oar. One held the oar in place, while the second did the pulling. In this way, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Mayer, Mrs. Candy and others propelled the boat some 3 or 4 miles in a hopeless effort to overtake the light that twinkled on the horizon most of the night. Mrs. Walter Douglas handled the tiller of boat 2. Boxhall, who was in charge, pulled an oar and helped to fire the green flares. Mrs. J. Stewart White didn't help to row number 8, but she appointed herself a sort of signalman. She had a cane with a built-in electric light, and during most of the night she waved it fiercely about, alternately helping and confusing everyone. In number 8, Marie Young, Gladys Cherry, Mrs. F. Joel Swift and others pulled at the oars. Mrs. William R. Bucknell noted with pride that as she rowed next to the Countess of Roth's, further down the boat her maid was rowing next to the Countess's maid. Most of the night the Countess handled the tiller. Seaman Jones, in charge, later explained to the Sphere why he put her there. "There was a woman in my boat, as was a woman. When I saw the way she was carrying herself and heard the quiet, determined way she spoke to the others, I knew she was more of a man than any we had on board." At the American investigation, perhaps lacking the guidance of the press, Jones phrased it a little less elegantly. She had a lot to say, so I put her to steering the boat. But there was no doubt how he felt. After the rescue, Jones removed the numeral 8 from the lifeboat Glasgow, screamed for her husband, Victor, until the Countess of Roths couldn't stand it any longer. Turning the tiller over to her cousin Gladys Cherry, she slipped down beside the Signora and spent the rest of the night rowing beside her, trying to cheer her up. In number 6, Madame de Villiers constantly called for her son, who wasn't even on the Titanic. Gradually, a good deal of squabbling broke out. The women in number 3 bickered about trifles, while their husbands sat in embarrassed silence. Mrs. Washington Dodge, who wanted to row back against the wishes of nearly everyone else in number 5, grew so bitter that when number 7 came by, she switched boats in mid-ocean. Maud Slocum, the Titanic's irrepressible masseuse, helped to bawl out a woman who kept setting off of all things an alarm clock in number 11. Seaman Diamond, a tough ex-boxer in charge of number 15, swore oaths that turned the night air even bluer. Many of the arguments revolved around smoking. In 1912, tobacco was not yet the American cure-all for easing strain and tension, and the women in the boats were shocked. Miss Elizabeth Shoots begged 2 men sitting near her in number 3 to stop smoking, but they kept on. To Mrs. J. Stuart White, it was a matter that still rankled at the investigation. When Senator Smith asked if she wished to mention anything bearing on the crew's discipline, she exploded. As we cut loose from the ship, these stewards took out cigarettes and lighted them. On an occasion like that, in the more casual intimacy of Boat 1, smoking was no problem. When Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon gave Fireman Hendrickson a good cigar, neither of the women in the boat could very well object. Miss Francatelli was employed by Sir Cosmo's wife, and Lady Duff Gordon was too sick to care. With her head down upon the oars and tackle, she vomited away the night. But number 1 had its squabbles too. Sir Cosmo and Mr. C.E. Henry Stengel of Newark, New Jersey, didn't get along very well. This might not have mattered in a crowded boat, but with only 12 people, it was rather grating. According to Sir Cosmo, Mr. Stengel kept shouting, "Boat ahoy!" He also gave Lookout Simmons conflicting advice on where to steer. Nobody paid any attention, but he irritated Sir Cosmo so much that he finally asked Mr. Stengel to keep quiet. Sir Cosmo was doubly annoyed when Mr. Stengel later testified that, between Sir Cosmo and myself, we decided which way to go. Meanwhile, Fireman Pusey was smouldering over Lady Duff Gordon's remark to Miss Francatelli on the loss of her nightgown. At the time he told her, "Never mind, you have saved your lives, but we have lost our kit." Half an hour later, still smouldering, Pusey turned to Sir Cosmo. "I suppose you have lost everything." "Of course, but you can get more." "Yes. Well, we have lost our kit, and the company won't give us any more. And what's more, our pay stops from tonight." Sir Cosmo had had enough. "Very well, I will give you a £5 each to start a new kit." He did too, but lived to regret it. The Duff Gordons' near monopoly of Boat 1, its failure to row back, gave the gift the look of a payoff that Sir Cosmo had a hard time living down. Nor did subsequent events help his case. When Lady Duff Gordon reassembled the men in life jackets for a group picture after the rescue, they looked more and more like the Duff Gordons' personal crew. Still later, when it came socked under when the Titanic sank. Then women began shouting back, and as the boat splashed along in the dark, the night echoed with bitter repartee. Most of the time, number 6 was heading towards the elusive light on the horizon, and when it became clear they could never reach it, Hitchens announced that all was lost. They had neither water, nor food, nor compass, nor charts. They were hundreds of miles from land, and didn't even know which way they were heading. Major Buchan had given up by now, but the women tore into him. Mrs. Candy grimly showed him the North Star. Mrs. Brown told him to shut up and row. Mrs. Mayer jeered at his courage. Then they tied up with boat 16, and Hitchens ordered them to drift. But the women couldn't stand the cold and insisted on rowing to keep warm. Mrs. Brown gave an oar to a grimy stoker transferred from number 16 and told everyone to row. Hitchens moved to stop her, and Mrs. Brown told him if he came any closer, she would throw him overboard. He sank back under a blanket and began shouting insults. Mrs. Mayer answered back, accused him of taking all the blankets and drinking all the whiskey. Hitchens hotly denied it. The transferred stoker, wondering what on earth he had run into, called out, I say, don't you know you're talking to a lady? Hitchens yelled back, I know whom I'm speaking to, and I'm commanding this boat. But the stoker's rebuke worked. The quartermaster lapsed into silence. Boat 6 rowed on through the night with Hitchens subdued, Buchan out of the picture, and Mrs. Brown virtually in charge. Even among the men clinging desperately to overturned boat B, there was time for petty bickering. Colonel Gracie, his teeth chattering, his matted hair now frozen stiff, noticed the man beside him wore a dry outing cap. The colonel asked to borrow the cap to warm his head for a minute. And what would I do? The man shot back. Nerves on boat B were understandably frayed. The air was leaking out from the hull, and every minute it sank a little lower in the water. The sea occasionally washed over the keel, and one impulsive move might pitch everybody into the sea. They needed cool leadership badly. At this point, Gracie was relieved to hear the deep, rich voice of Second Officer Lightoller, and even more relieved when a somewhat tipsy crewman on the boat called out, We will all obey what the officer orders. Lightoller quickly responded, feeling that only concerted, organised action would keep the boat balanced. He had all 30 men stand up. He arranged them in a double column, facing the bow. Then as the boat lurched with the sea, he shouted, Lean to the right, stand upright, lean to the left, whatever was necessary to counteract the swell. As they threw their weight this way and that, for a while they yelled, Boat ahoy! Boat ahoy! Lightoller finally stopped them, urging them to save their strength. It grew still colder, and the colonel complained again about his head, this time to Lightoller. Another man offered them both a pull from his flask. They turned him down, but pointed out Walter Hurst. Shivering nearby, Hurst thought Rest is sure the captain never reached the boat. Besides, Senior was one of the last to arrive, probably too late to have seen the captain himself. Most of all, they all talked of getting rescued. Lightoller soon discovered Harold Bride, the junior wireless operator, at the stern of the boat, and from his position in the bow he asked what ships were on the way. Bride shouted back, "The Baltic, the Olympic, the Carpathia." Lightoller figured the Carpathia should arrive at daybreak, passed the word around to buck up sagging spirits. From then on they scanned the horizon, searching for any sign. From time to time they were cheered by the green flares lit by Boxall in boat 2. Even Lightoller thought they must come from another ship. Slowly the night passed. Towards dawn a slight breeze sprang up. The air seemed even more frigid. The sea grew choppy. Bitter cold waves splashed over the feet, the shins, the knees of the men on boat B. The spray stabbed their bodies and blinded their eyes. One man, then another rolled off the stern and disappeared from sight. The rest fell silent, completely absorbed in the battle to stay alive. The sea was silent too. No one saw a trace of life in the waves that rippled the smooth Atlantic at the first light of dawn streaked the sky. But one man still lived, thanks to a remarkable combination of initiative, luck, and alcohol. 4 hours earlier, Chief Baker, Charles Ewan, was awakened, like so many on the Titanic, by that strange grinding jar, and like many others, he heard the call to general quarters a little after midnight. But Ewan didn't merely report to the boat deck. He reasoned that if boats were needed, provisions were needed too. So on his own initiative, he mustered his staff of 13 bakers and ransacked the Titanic's larder of all spare bread. The bakers then trooped topside, carrying 4 loaves apiece. This done, Ewan retired to his cabin on E-deck, port side, for a nip of whisky. About 12:30 he felt sufficiently fortified to reascend the stairs to his boat, number 10. At this stage it was still difficult to persuade the women to go, so Ewan resorted to stronger methods. He went down to the promenade deck and hauled some up by force. Then, to use his own word, he threw them into the boat. Rough, but effective. Ewan was assigned to number 10 as skipper, but he thought there were enough men to handle the boat, so he jumped out and helped launch it instead. To go with it, he explained, would have set a bad example. It was now 1:20. He scampered down the slanting stairs again to his cabin on E-deck and poured himself another drink. He sat down on his bunk and nursed it along, aware but not particularly caring that the water now rippled through the cabin doorway, swilled across the checkered linoleum, and rose to the top of his shoes. About 1:45 he saw, of all people, gentle old Dr. O'Loughlin poking around. It never occurred to Ewan to wonder what the old gentleman was doing way down here, but the proximity of the pantry suggests that Ewan and the doctor were thinking along similar lines. In any case, Ewan greeted him briefly, then went back up to the boat deck. None too soon, for the Titanic was listing heavily now, and the slant was much steeper. Any longer, and the stairs might have been impossible. Though all the boats were gone, Ewan was anything but discouraged. He went down to B-deck and began throwing deck chairs through the windows of the enclosed promenade. was 2:10. As he quenched his thirst, this time it was water, he heard a kind of crash, as though something had buckled. The pantry cups and saucers flew about him, the lights glowed red, and overhead he heard the pounding of feet running aft. He bolted out of the pantry, towards the stern end of A deck, just behind a swarm of people, running the same way and clambering down from the boat deck above. He kept out of the crush as much as possible, and ran along in the rear of the crowd. He vaulted down the steps to B deck, then to the well deck. Just as he got there, the Titanic gave a sickening twist to port, throwing most of the people into a huge heap along the port rail. Only Ewan kept his balance, alert but relaxed. His equilibrium was marvellous. As the stern rose higher and corkscrewed to port, the deck was now listing too steeply to stand on, and Ewan slipped over the starboard rail and stood on the actual side of the ship. He worked his way up the side, still holding on to the rail, but from the outside until it reached the white painted steel plates of the poop deck. He now stood on the rounded stern end of the ship, which had swung high in the air some 150 feet above the water. Ewan casually tightened his lifebelt. Then he glanced at his watch. It said 2:15. As an afterthought, he took it off and stuck it into his hip pocket. He was beginning to puzzle over his position when he felt the stern beginning to drop under his feet. It was like taking an elevator. As the sea closed over the stern, Ewan stepped off into the water. He didn't even get his head wet. He paddled off into the night, little bothered by the freezing water. For over an hour, he bobbed about, moving his arms and legs just enough to keep upright. No trick at all, he explained cheerfully today. It was 4 o'clock when he saw what he thought was wreckage in the first grey light of day. He swam over and discovered it was the upturned collapsible beam. The keel was crowded and he couldn't climb on, so he hung around for a while until he spied an old friend from the kitchen, Andre Chef, John Maynard. Blood proved thicker than water. Maynard held out his hand and Ewan hung on, treading water, still thoroughly insulated. The others didn't notice him, partly because they were too numb to care, partly because all eyes now scanned the southeast horizon. It was just after 3:30 when they first saw it, a distant flash followed by a far-off boom. In boat 6, Miss Norton cried, "There's a flash of lightning," while Hitchins growled, "It's a falling star." In number 13, a stoker lying in the bottom, almost unconscious from the cold, bolted up shouting, "That was cannon." In number 8, Seaman Jones hardly dared believe his eyes. Turning to the Countess of Roth's, rowing next to him, he whispered, "Can you see any lights? Look on the next wave we top, but we don't say anything in case I am wrong." As the boat heaved up on the next swell, the Countess scanned the horizon. Far off she saw a dim light. A few moments later there was no doubt about it, and they told the others. The single light grew brighter, then another appeared. Then row after row. A big steamer was pounding up, firing rockets to reassure the Titanic's people that help was on the way. In number 9, deckhand Paddy McGough suddenly thundered, "Let us all pray to God, for there is a ship on the horizon it's making for us." The men in boat B let out a yelp of joy and started babbling again. Someone lit a newspaper Edson straw hat, it would burn longer. In Mrs. A.S. Jerwain's boat, they dipped handkerchiefs in kerosene and lit them as signals. In number 13, they twisted a paper torch out of letters. Boxall burned a last green flare in boat 2. In number 8, Mrs. White swung her electric cane as never before. Over the water flowed cheers and yells of relief. Even nature seemed pleased as the dreary night gave way to the mauve and coral of a beautiful dawn. Not everyone saw it. In half-swung